Community Safety MEC Faith Mazibuko also here. Of course, both working hand in hand to try and assess the situation, give feedback on where the province is, how they're going to try and deal with the situation. I'll also try and find out. I'd rather report on it in Nzinga once I've got official comment regarding some casualties, I understand. But I'll wait for the Premier to give me the correct details. I think at this particular time of such heightened tension, it's quite important for us to get, we'll follow the Premier now as he goes on that look about. Just across from here, a shopping centre which has also been looted. Good afternoon, MEC Premier. All right, we'll chat to you very short after you do your assessment. The MEC laughing at my shoes. All right, so the Premier will now, of course, do this inspection. I guess we're going to head towards that shopping centre where just moments ago, and Nzinga, what we brought you live there, police had to react to continuing looting that is taking place. Here in Gauteng, we'll hear from the Premier what the extent of the damage is, what the death toll stands at the moment, and how the province plans to continue to assist in this regard. So we're headed out of the police station now. The Premier will, it seems, head towards the Ndofaya. Yeah, that's it. The Ndofaya mall. And that's where he will get this assessment from police. We'll follow them. Stay with us on these visuals because we will obviously, there you have it. Police are firing. Right, take a look over there. Here you have community members who are running towards that particular direction. The Premier is here to get an assessment of what is taking place. I think they would really need to assess whether now it is worth going into that direction because the looting itself just continues. It's quite unbelievable, if you ask me, in that while law enforcement are trying to make sure that there is law and order, some of the residents continue to loot. They continue to go inside that mall. And police, of course, having to respond to push back some of those residents. Premier, I'm terribly sorry. Let me come in there. Thank you very much for your time. I mean, the scenes we're seeing in Gauteng at the moment, absolutely unbelievable. Your assessment of what is taking place at this time. You're here in Ndofaya, in Meadowlands. The shooting continues, the looting continues.
Yes, certainly I was in Ekurhuleni in Vosloorus. The message that I want to communicate to the people of our province is that this looting and the violence that is taking place now is something that needs to stop. All of us, the law enforcement agencies in Gauteng province, together with the South African National Defence Force, have been working tremendously hard, including overnight. But the key thing that I really want to get out there is that it is no longer just the law enforcement agencies that will stop this. I want to say to the leaders in our communities, I want to say to the residents of Gauteng, the looting and the violence will impact everything. The health services at the moment, I got a report earlier on, our program for vaccination has slowed down because the mobility is affected by this. The mobility of our ambulance services, as well as the provision of healthcare services, the delivery of oxygen, is also affected by the blocking of the roads. What I want to communicate again to the people of our province that every community, whether it's the township or suburb, we would like the leaders of communities, the leaders of various sectors, from political parties. Yesterday, I was talking to all the political parties represented in our legislature, to the ANC and its alliance partners, to the religious sector. We need, every sector needs to stand up now and say looting and violence can't take place in our community. The police are arresting a lot of people. In Gauteng, Just in Johannesburg alone, they have arrested more than 279 people in Johannesburg alone. We're also losing lives now. Businesses are shutting down. Even small businesses here in Soweto can no longer operate. 10 people in this mall, out of a stampede that took place when the looting took place, 10 people have passed on out in this Ndofaya mall. That's an additional number that we're getting. These 10 people who lost their lives are family members who were out there, who came out. Some of them just joined into the looting. I want to say to the people of our province, we understand those who are unemployed, the loss of young people who are unemployed. We understand that situation. There are those who have one type of social problem, inadequate food, but the looting is something we must stop because it is undermining every little effort. It's undermining the economy, different areas of the province. These shops were employing people.
Premier, sorry if I could just come in there. Devastating what you're saying. 10 people died in a stampede here at the Ndofaya Mall. Could you just tell us exactly when that had taken place? Also, could you give us a tally of exactly how many people have passed on in the province? We saw in KwaZulu-Natal they managed to give us a sense of what we're dealing with. You're saying also in Johannesburg more than 200 people have been arrested. Do we have a bit of an overview in terms of in Gauteng in its totality? How many people have been arrested? How many have lost their lives?
Over 400 people across the province have been arrested for this looting and activities of public violence. I must say to you that the number of those who have died has jumped. This number has jumped to 19 as a result of the 10 that died in a stampede in this shopping center here during the looting. Late afternoon yesterday, the police discovered that in the evening that 10 people died during the stampede in this mall. We have a Metro Police officer from Ekurhuleni, a member of the EMPD, he was shot at when they were stopping the looting at one of the malls in the Katoras area. That number that's what makes our numbers to 19 at the moment. And I'm saying it is extremely sad that 10 of those died in a stampede right here in Meadowlands in Soweto during the looting. I am confident that the law enforcement officers, the leadership of society, the leadership of government, the leadership of political parties, the leadership of the religious sector and community organizations working together, we can get our communities under control to make sure that the looting stops, because the criminal element has hijacked this situation. And the criminal element does that all the time.
Premier, do you have the situation under control? It's continuing. There have been a number of calls, including from the president, for the looting to stop. Do you have the situation under control? Do you believe, as the Gauteng provincial government, together with police, and I see also MEC Mazibuko is here as well?
As we speak now, the looting is continuing. That's what I'm saying. The looting is continuing. I can't say the situation is under control as long as the looting is continuing. Where looting has stopped and has not continued or has not even started is where we have been able to get community leaders, different sectors in those communities for people to stand up and say that looting cannot take place in our community, because when shops are closed down or factories are closed down, it's people who work in these shops, when businesses right here in Soweto, I spoke to the leaders of small businesses here in Soweto who said to me their businesses are affected as well. When those businesses are not operating, it affects the lives of people here. So at the moment, the situation is not under control, because as long as there's looting, as long as looting continues, I can't say the situation is under control. But what are we doing? We are dispatching not just the law enforcement officers, we are dispatching leaders to various communities in those areas where looting is happening to be able to communicate, because this is time for leaders to also be there on the ground. We must make sure that this looting comes to a stop, because it is undermining and every little effort we have been making about rebuilding the local economies here, is that effort is undermined. Let me tell you that the looting is not only from the big shops. There's also looting from the spaza shops. This is continuing. There's looting in our schools. We've got schools here that have been looted, technology that we have put in our schools. Some of our schools have been vandalized and looted. So this is dangerous, and there must be no political justification for this. What all of us must do is to say we must stop the looting at the moment. We know there are underlying social issues, but those underlying social issues require our attention. It is best for all of us that we want our economy to grow in an inclusive way. We want this economy to continue to create more jobs, so that this many young people who are waiting to be harnessed by any opportunistic force, including criminal elements, these young people need to be trained, they need to be able to get employment. But we must stop the looting immediately, we must stop the violence immediately.
Premier.
These men and women, the police officers, are overstretched. On their own, even if we can bring...
So you admit, Premier, that they're overstretched
they are overstretched. It is the truth.
It is. They're overstretched, and you admit that there are underlying systemic issues that is fueling
Certainly.
the looting and the violence.
Certainly.
So is a police-led or a security-led response to the unrest adequate?
Did you hear what I say? I am saying we must get the law enforcement to do their work. That is their job. That's the job they are hired to do. And we as the leaders of various organizations, government, sectors, we as the leaders the leaders of Soweto in this area cannot sit back and just say the law enforcement officers must do this. They will do their work, but we want to mobilize various sectors of society. That's what we are doing. I had extensive discussions with the leaders of political parties in the legislature, with the leaders of the alliance in Gauteng, with the ANC structures across the whole province, the alliance structures, civil society organizations, to say to them, all of us have to step in. This looting and the violence will lead us to a point we don't really want to get to that situation. That is why we are saying it's not just law enforcement only. Law enforcement and leadership of communities. We must all step forward and say looting cannot take place in our community. I'm calling on every community from the townships to the suburbs across Gauteng. The leadership needs to be working with us, with the law enforcement officers, to say looting cannot take place in our area.
The deployment of the South African National...
What is the estimated cost of damage?
Let's do this, colleagues. Let's do a walkabout and then let's have that discussion, because there are other new guys that are just arrived.
All right, we're going to do...
What is the cost of damage?
We're still consolidating what the exact cost of damage is across the whole province, but I can tell you that it is quite a serious setback on our economy. This looting and violence and the closing down, including of small businesses, is taking us back in a very significant way. At the moment, there are people who are employed in these areas who cannot do work. So we will be able to release that information about the exact cost to our economy as soon as we can.
So let's do this, colleagues, please.
All right, so the Premier of Gauteng will now do a walkabout at this particular site where 10 people now confirmed were to have died in a stampede here at the Ndofaya Mall in the Meadowlands. He's going to do a walkabout there now, confirming breaking news that 19 people have died in the province since the start of the violence, 10 of which, of course, at this Ndofaya Mall, with the Premier has now confirmed that those 10 people had died in a stampede, so bringing the total tally to 19 in the province. More than 400 people have been arrested as well in the province since the start of the violence. That being confirmed by the Gauteng Premier David Makhura, calling for calm once again, saying police are overstretched in this particular matter. The South African National Defence Force soldiers we saw a bit earlier on today being deployed to various parts of Soweto. You heard the President say that deployment will of course be on the basis of where the violence itself is continuing, is persisting, and that is certainly what we have seen here in Soweto since the early hours of this morning. So breaking news here on the SABC News channel, 19 people confirmed dead since the start of this violence. What we're going to take you live into now is the Ndofaya Mall, where 10 of those people had died in a stampede. That being confirmed by the Gauteng Premier David Makhura. Whether this is going to be enough to try and quell the tensions in Soweto and I guess in other parts of Gauteng, that certainly remains to be seen. But while just a short moment ago, when the Premier was arriving, when the Premier was arriving, you had a situation where some of the looting was continuing. And at this particular point, the residents themselves have moved from where we are. Police had been firing in Zinga, as you saw when you crossed to us live a bit earlier on. That's where police had been firing from the top of the mall right to the bottom where the looting had taken place. So, I mean, ironically, as the looting continued here this morning, this coming on the backdrop of that stampede, and which claimed the lives of 10 people. So a very tough situation here at the moment. The Premier himself will be able to try and assess exactly what is taking place, accompanied, of course, by the Community Safety MEC, Faith Mazibuko. Just one of the parts where you see the looting itself had taken place. Just assessing some of the damage here. Getting a briefing about what transpired here.
Who's the owner of the shop?
So this is a printing shop which was owned by a young person from right here in Meadowlands who employed 3 people. As you can see, it was looted, and then it slowed down. The young entrepreneur who was running this business and employing 3 other young people means at the moment their business and their dreams are destroyed. They are at home now. And I get this story quite a lot. People think this is just targeting big companies. The impact in the townships, the impact on the township economy is quite severe. I saw that in Atteridgeville yesterday, a young lady who had just started a business there, and that business was looted. Her dreams were essentially destroyed by this, and that is why for us it is extremely important to get this message out to communities that the looting must stop. This looting is destroying everything that we have been building. We know that we still have a very long way to get an economy, including in the townships, an economy that grows and that employs more people. But the progress that we have been making is getting reversed by this looting and the destruction and the shutting down, even of small businesses. And our message is very clear. We are calling for calm, we are calling for peace, but we are also calling for communities to take charge. This cannot happen in our area. Oh, thank you.
All right, we continue. The Gauteng Premier here in Ndofaya Mall. This is where 10 people had died in a stampede. That the Premier confirming that. He continues to do a walkabout here and calls for calm once again as some of the looting continued here in Soweto. This one of the malls that was highly affected. Everything looted here as well. The Premier continues to get a brief in terms of what has transpired, but we do have that official tally at the moment. 90. Let's move to.
People are burning cars in Meter Point.
All right. Live pictures from Soweto at the Ndofaya Mall, where 10 people confirmed now have died in a stampede, bringing the death toll in Gauteng to 19. Expected that that number could rise. I recall just yesterday in Zinga when we had been out in Gauteng, there'd also been someone who'd passed on there. The circumstances surrounding exactly how that got to that point, we really could not establish, but the death toll itself continues to rise. And if you just look at what the Premier had said in terms of the stampede that had taken place, that is what you are seeing. You are seeing hundreds of people charging into the malls all at once, trying to grab as much as possible. So that's the challenge at this particular point. As the police try to maintain law and order, hundreds going into these particular areas. The MEC Faith Mazibuko, part of the executive here, Gauteng, assessing the damage, trying to get a sense of exactly what the situation is on the ground, where more reinforcement would be necessary, but admitting, of course, that the police are quite stretched. Bringing in the South African National Defence Force, those soldiers.
About 6 were found here, dead. So obviously it tells you that either they were climbing out of the stairs, trying to run.
The stampede happened in here, and the 10 people who lost their lives were retrieved from here. And, it is very sad. It is extremely sad.
Premier, have you identified any instances of xenophobic violence that has played out in any of the places that you've assessed so far?
All we can say is that there are several shops that were looted indiscriminately. I've said some of the shops include small businesses and spaza shops. There are in some areas where businesses operated by foreign nationals were also amongst those that were included. I use that word very carefully because I say there are instances where the targeting was indiscriminate. It's not like you leave this ones and go to this ones. That is why the looting has to stop, because the criminal element will seize upon any opportunity. We have seen it before when we had xenophobic outbreaks, the attacks, the xenophobic violence attacks, that the criminal element knows what they are looking for. And we mustn't create any space for any justification about whether this is the foreigners is right to loot the shops of the foreigners. What looting must stop. Violence must stop. And we want people who are running their own businesses to earn a living, to feed their families. Those who are working in this establishment, people who this morning I got a very terrible story in many areas in the province. Workers arrived at these shops. Others could not get to their workplaces because they were afraid. They said we were told that the road is blocked, that road is blocked, or our factory may be a target. I want to send out a message there that we will stop this. We will ensure, from the point of view of government, working with every sector, ensure that we restore peace and calm in our province, because we want people who want to go on with their. We know COVID is something hanging over our necks. I was very happy that the numbers in Gauteng province, the wave is peaking and the numbers are slowly tapering down. I was getting a lot of joy from that we are getting out of this third wave. But these big numbers of people who have been crowding around these shops is a great concern for me. Although the peak is coming down, I am telling you, we are going to have a problem in the areas where there's been groupings of people out of this. So I want to make a call again to the people of Gauteng and to say to the leaders, let us go to the ground and making sure we call for calm in our communities. And there should be no community that is left out. There can be no justification. You can't say the violence must be in that community or looting must happen in that business. There must be no justification. The law enforcement agencies need the helping hand of communities, like when we deal with crime all the way. And I'm saying, young people who have been sitting there unemployed, the way to get to solve the problem, young people, is not to loot. That is not the solution. Let's make sure that all of us are speaking with one voice on the need to act to stop the violence. We are losing lives. 10 people here out of a stampede passed on. We have lost a Metro Police officer. And you know that is the Metro Police officer was shot at. So there are areas where you can see that this is organized systematically by people who want to do harm. And I am saying we will get to them. We will get those who are involved, including in attacking the law enforcement officers. We will get to them. We will get them behind bars. We must arrest the criminal element and those who are systematically behind this. We want communities to work with us. This is my emphasis. From El Dorado Park to Hammanskraal, to Kagiso, to Vosloorus, to the suburbs of Gauteng, we want communities to work with us to arrest this situation and make sure that the criminal element does not take over.
Premier, what is intelligence telling you about what's happening right now? Is there a possibility that this...
All right, we're going to come out of that, where my colleague Griselda Lewis is covering David Makhura visiting a site where 10 people were killed in a
pandemic, and I think it is for that reason that we are saying this criminality and this violence and this looting must stop.
And just once again, Mr. Premier, a sad day. I mean, the lives that have been lost. We heard the President last night talking about, that impact, that the loss of life, it's irreplaceable. So surely that's really unacceptable.
Look, just here in Meadowlands, at this shopping mall, 10 people died yesterday late afternoon and were discovered by the police at night out of a stampede. And I know that the families of those who died at the moment some of them wouldn't have even known that someone was part of the looting. So those are bereaved families as we speak. They are grieving. It is sad. We also have the 11th person in the Meadowlands area who was involved in another looting incident. Also passed on. 10 was in here. We have a Metro Police officer in Ekurhuleni. Just overnight, the number of those who passed on in Gauteng, just overnight. By the time the President spoke, the number was less. We had less than 10 people. As I speak now, we have 18 residents and a law enforcement officer. That makes it 19. We cannot afford this. We cannot afford this. And this has to come to a stop.
And just the proactiveness of the law enforcement agencies, Premier, in some instances, they have been found wanting, the lack of visibility of police. Going to the night and making sure that you maintain visibility. How are you going to ensure that?
I accept that in some instances you have had. I accept that in some instances you have had a situation where there were not enough officers on the ground, or the response was very, very slow, or it was reactive rather than proactive. I accept that, but this is the issues we have been sorting out in the last 24 hours. Just strengthening police response.
Are you hoping that the
coordination
presence
between the police as well as the soldiers who have been deployed, that has improved. You will not see the soldiers at one point because they are sent to different places to reinforce the police where the police are saying come to this area. So, but the soldiers who have been deployed are there, and the police say to them, you need to come to this area and help us. But I really want South Africans to also feel for law enforcement officers. Please feel for them. They are doing the best they can. They will improve their response. That's the message we have said to them. That there should be no excuse around. We have to ensure that we have a much better response, especially where communities are organized now. They are saying, come over to assist us. That's why I'm saying we want communities to be organized. But law enforcement officers must be able to respond to calls that the communities are making.
All right. Gauteng Premier David Makhura giving us a briefing there on the state of affairs in the province pertaining to the ongoing violence that is taking place. He admitting that police have really been overstretched in the manner in which they've had to respond to the looting, sporadic looting in different places of Gauteng, Soweto, a hive of that kind of violent behavior, saying that 18 residents passed on of Gauteng, one law enforcement officer. And you'd recall a bit earlier on today on our sister program, Morning Live, that is where we also saw one of the Johannesburg Metro Police Department officers also injured An ambulance was brought in to try and treat him, and he was taken off for treatment to a nearby hospital. So the situation itself currently a bit quiet, but whether that's going to remain the same over the next couple of hours, that certainly remains to be seen. We often see a lot of this violence flaring up towards late afternoon into the evening. Whether the presence of the South African National Defence Force, those soldiers who are also being deployed now to bolster efforts in terms of security and trying to stop that looting, whether that is going to assist the situation, that certainly remains to be seen. But breaking news attributing that to the Gauteng Premier, him indicating that the 19 people have passed away in this ongoing violence, and more than 400 have been arrested for alleged involvement in the looting here in Gauteng. That's the latest developments that we have at this particular point. I think that the Premier, I'm not sure if he's still scheduled to head towards Omonde, which is where the provincial coronavirus command council sits. He was due to give a briefing there on what the latest is, also talking about how the vaccination process has also been interrupted as a result of the ongoing violence in the province. So I think with that briefing that he's also received now, continued calls for calm in the province, asking people to desist from breaking, looting, and what you would have seen mostly is that a lot of the soldiers that have been deployed mainly to these malls, which have become massive points of attack for the ongoing looting that we have seen. So that's the current situation at the moment in terms of what Gauteng is facing. How long it's going to continue, we certainly don't know. And I think I'm going to bring in, perhaps I can, maybe MEC, I could bring you in as well as community safety. Please, could you have a chat with us live on SABC News?
Yes.
MEC, the safety of the community really compromised at this particular point, has been for a couple of days.
Yes.
What are you doing about that?
What we're doing, we're also mobilizing our patrollers. Remember, in communities, we also have community patrollers. So that then community patrollers, now that the police are focusing on the looting and the out-of-order situation, for them to also come in as a backup and be able to also share information where there are threats of safety, especially like others will take advantage as police are focusing on malls. They are actually getting into people's houses now, stealing whatever it is. So community yes, so that then also remember they are community members. Must also not compromise them. And through the building of our street committees, others are watching at street level. So that then then police are able to follow up in those houses where they've seen them carrying stuff that has been looted even from the malls. So that's why I say we also do not want to compromise their safety, because they also give us information, first-hand information, what is happening at the ground level.
MEC, could you, for someone who is sitting at home from Gauteng, looking to you and saying, I need you to tell me that I can be safe. You've just told me that their houses are being broken into now. It's moved from the malls to the houses. What would you say to the people of Gauteng? Can you guarantee the safety of the people of Gauteng who are sitting and watching at home? They don't feel safe.
I know. Remember, I also stay next to Deeply Foster. Gunfire and gunshots that are also here from there. And you look at the time, you wonder, are people, because it's curfew, and people are supposed to be sleeping. And obviously the firing of gunshot makes anyone to panic, even when they are in their own homes. But we wish to reassure them to say, out of these community structures that we have, they are the ones that are quickly able to share information of anything that is happening. I wish to reassure them that they must remain vigilant, but over and above, make sure that they even remove their children out of the streets. Sometimes we allow our children to go play and we're putting them at risk. But if we're in our own yards, not necessarily in the house, but in our yards, at night, Let's make sure that we're together. And our WhatsApp groups, many communities also have WhatsApp groups amongst themselves. Share information, caution one another, so that then each time that or they pick up something, then those community patrollers are the ones that are able to act faster and be able to attend to that situation very fast.
MEC Mazibuko, thank you very much for your time. We were live on SABC News. I think the Premier of Gauteng probably going to leave this particular area now after getting this assessment of the situation at hand here. And have a look there. You see some very young children also, participating, running from different directions, police trying to assist in this regard. You would have take a look at this vehicle here, that white vehicle over there, the bakkie over there. You would see those are police that are just moving around this particular area. And that's where you would see a majority of the residents just running from one place to the other, people trying to keep going into the mall, despite the fact that there has been loss of life here. And this is what you will find. Some of the police on the ground, some moving around in vehicles, the military police as well. I saw a bit earlier on towards the Chris Hani Baragwanath, the Bara Mall, here in Soweto. And it's a bit of a tough situation where right here where the Premier is, these police officers doing quite a lot of a patrol here. So this is the area where 10 people had died after a stampede had taken place here at the Ndofaya Mall in Soweto. A lot of that we've been seeing, people charging towards these shops to loot whatever it is that they can, and that tragedy taking place during one of those incidents of the looting that has been taking place. With so many calls that we have seen pertaining to calls for calm, calls for communities to desist from the violence, none of that is taking place at this time. A bit earlier on, when the South African National Defence Force, the soldiers had been deployed to Soweto at one of the malls where we had been stationed since the early hours of this morning, that's where you see quite a lot of the calm there now, with the presence of the SANDF, the soldiers, guarding what is left of those malls, which have been completely damaged. And while there is loss of life, there is also loss of income for thousands of workers at these establishments that have been compromised as a result. I'm going to leave it there for just a moment, and perhaps also need to charge a bit of our devices here. And my colleague Makhura will join us here on the program from about shortly before 2 o'clock, and he'll continue with our coverage for the rest of the afternoon. But stay tuned here to SABC News. We'll bring you the latest live from Soweto, other parts of Gauteng, as well as KwaZulu-Natal.